Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. Today we're diving into a new story called The Mafia Nanny. Before we get started, please like and subscribe to my channel. It really helps me make more videos like this. Our story begins with Davina, standing on a balcony, looking down at the guests arriving for a grand party. To her, the world was filled with magic, and her life seemed like an endless celebration. Her parents always provided everything she needed, and she never questioned where it all came from. She adored them so much that she didn't realize who they truly were until that fateful night at the party. A fire broke out, and suddenly everything changed. Davina discovered that her parents might have had enemies, or perhaps they were someone else's enemies. Amidst the chaos, her parents armed themselves with weapons and ordered the nanny to take Davina out of the house. The nanny carried her to safety, and by the time the sun rose, everything had turned to ashes. Her home was gone, and her parents had died in the fire. The nanny asked Davina to come with her, promising to make her stronger than her enemies. Davina wanted to know if she could ever be as strong as her nanny, but the nanny's primary job was to care for children. However, she assured Davina that she would teach her to protect others like herself, who had also become orphans. Davina finally understood what she meant, and we see a time skip of 8 years. Now at the Elite Nanny Academy, or ENA, Davina had been training to build her strength. Mrs. Bremerton, the nanny who saved her, had taken her in and raised her. She had become the headmistress of the ENA, and Davina was finally ready for her first assignment. The headmistress, Mrs. Bremerton, mentions that Mr. Angelinis' proposal is incredibly generous. She offers him a nanny with decades of experience for the payment he's providing, but Mr. Angelini insists on someone who has never worked for anyone before. She then presents him with a list of recent graduates, and Mr. Angelini asks if they are all qualified. The headmistress explains that the graduates have mastered various skills in the ENA program, such as child development, first aid, combat, driving, cybersecurity, and many other areas. When asked why he specifically needs an elite nanny, Mr. Angelini recalls a troubling event that happened while Angelini was busy with his work as a mafia boss. He was threatening someone to deliver books on time. Suddenly, his young son interrupted, asking for milk along with the books. Both Angelini and the person he was threatening were surprised as they turned to look at the cute, blonde-haired boy who had asked for chocolate milk. Angelini tried to quiet his son, but the boy wouldn't listen. The person hurriedly brought some milk, nervously offering it while both father and son argued. Frustrated, Angelini hoisted his son onto his shoulder and stormed out of the place. Back in the present, Angelini explains to the headmistress that his son's mother has passed away and that his work does not provide childcare. The headmistress inquires about the specific qualifications he's looking for in a nanny. Angelini slides a profile sheet toward her, and she is surprised to see it belongs to Davina. Though Davina's specialty was in cybersecurity, not a typical skill needed for a child's nanny, Angelini is adamant that she is the one he wants. The headmistress tries to recommend other nannies, but for some reason, he insists on Davina. Meanwhile, Davina enters the headmistress's office, excited to hear she's finally been assigned to a job. However, the headmistress clarifies that she didn't choose her for the job. She was specifically selected by the client himself. She then reveals that the client is Gabriel Angelini. Hearing the name, Davina is suddenly reminded of an old news article about the fire at her family home. It was rumored that the Angelinis were responsible for the fire, though nothing had ever been proven. Seeing Angelini's file brings back memories of the infamous Mafia family. Noticing Davina's reaction, the headmistress, who feels sympathy for her, tries to convince her not to take the assignment. But Davina is determined. She feels she owes everything to the headmistress, and this could be her only chance to find out the truth about what happened that tragic night. Davina accepts the offer, and the headmistress asks if she is doing it for the right reasons. Davina firmly responds that the child needs protection, and she's the best person for the job. But if she happens to learn more about the fire along the way, it would only be a bonus. Gabriel approached the headmistress with a sharp gaze, asking if she had signed the contract. The headmistress nodded affirmatively just as Davina arrived, stepping into the room with a quiet confidence. The headmistress turned and introduced Davina to Gabriel Angelini, the formidable man before her. Davina's eyes lingered on him, taking in his imposing presence. Sensing her hesitation, Gabriel smirked and asked if she had lost her voice. It was then that Davina realized he was a bit of a jerk too, but she was not one to be intimidated. Composing herself, she extended a hand and introduced herself, stating that she looked forward to working with him. Gabriel's expression remained unreadable as he shook her hand, then casually instructed her to join him in the car whenever she was ready. The headmistress fixed her gaze on Davina, reminding her of all the rules she must strictly follow as part of the ENA. She must not harm, blackmail, embarrass, or compromise the security of the family, and most importantly, there must be no romance between her and any member. Davina listened intently, nodding in agreement, and promised she would make the headmistress proud. The headmistress smiled softly and told her that she already had. Feeling a swell of confidence, Davina smiled back and made her way to the waiting car. She greeted the driver, who introduced himself as Adam, and kindly took her bags. He gave her a piece of friendly advice not to be scared of the child. After all, he was only 4 years old. Davina chuckled and nodded before stepping inside the car, only to find herself in the presence of both mafias. A silent prayer slipped from her lips, hoping for ENA's guidance and protection. Gathering her courage, she turned to the small boy sitting beside Gabriel and asked if he was his son. With a shy but bright smile, the boy responded, "My name is Michelle." Gabriel affectionately ruffled his son's hair and added, "But we all call him Mikey." With a warm smile, Davina introduced herself to the little boy, but Michelle scrunched up his nose and gave her a peculiar look. "I don't trust you," he declared, "because you smell like oranges." Taken aback, Gabriel glanced over and asked with a hint of amusement, "Do you really?" Davina felt a slight blush creeping across her cheeks as she quickly sniffed her outfit, trying to discern any trace of citrus. Attempting to change the subject, she asked, "Where are we headed?" Michelle answered with a childish disdain, "A big mansion with ugly peasants." Before he could continue, Gabriel corrected him gently, "We just moved from Venice to Lyon." Davina, still adjusting to the unexpected conversation, remarked, "That's quite far. Lyon is in France." Gabriel nodded with a hint of a smile and offered, "The car has Wi-Fi if you need it." She noticed that the network was unsecured and felt a small twinge of concern. Suddenly, she heard a distinct click, the sound of the car doors locking. Gabriel glanced at Davina and stated firmly, "We don't drive with the doors unlocked. It isn't safe." Unfazed, Davina reached for her side of the door and unlocked it, countering, "But if there's an accident, it's safer to have them unlocked." Gabriel didn't miss a beat. He locked his door again, then leaned across her and swiftly locked hers as well. If someone tried to kidnap Mikey at a stoplight, it wouldn't be safe, he replied with a hint of seriousness in his voice. Davina took in his point, nodding slightly in reluctant agreement. Meanwhile, Mikey, still focused on his earlier observation, tugged at his father's sleeve. "Dad, does she really smell like oranges?" Gabriel chuckled, but Davina couldn't help but find the situation ironic. Here he was, lecturing her about safety and locked doors, yet his car's Wi-Fi was completely unsecured. She wondered if Gabriel's version of safety only extended to what he could see and control. Davina began typing on her computer, her fingers moving quickly over the keys. Mikey, curious as ever, leaned in closer, trying to see what she was doing. Suddenly, the partition window between the driver's seat and the back opened with a soft hum. Adam, the driver, glanced back and asked, "Is there anything you need, boss?" Gabriel's gaze shifted to Davina for a moment before he replied, "No." Mikey, with a sly smile, whispered, "She's got some tricks up her sleeve." Davina, not missing a beat, pressed a button on her laptop, and the window rolled back up, separating them from Adam once more. She turned to Gabriel and said, "If you're so concerned about locking things, maybe you should start by putting a password on your Wi-Fi." Gabriel's eyes narrowed slightly, but he nodded, acknowledging her point. Soon, they arrived at the Angelini Annex in France. Adam informed Davina to follow Mr. Angelini while he would take care of her bags. As Davina stepped out, she looked around the mansion. It wasn't what she had expected. There were no security cameras or bodyguards in sight. Gabriel led her inside, gesturing up the stairs. "Your room is upstairs," he told her. Turning to his son, he added, "Mikey, from now on, you'll be with Davina." Confused and upset, Mikey clung to his father. "I don't want to leave you, Dad," he protested. Gabriel's expression softened slightly. Starting today, you'll need to go to Davina for everything, he explained, and you won't be coming with me on the job anymore. Anger flashed across Mikey's face. He threw his chocolate milk onto the floor, the liquids splashing across the tiles, before storming out of the mansion. Gabriel watched him go, a flicker of pain in his eyes. He's had a hard time without his mother, he murmured. Davina nodded, understanding. I can see that, she said quietly. She hesitated before asking, does he know about your job? Gabriel turned to her, his expression unreadable. Do you? He countered. Davina met his gaze evenly. I read the news. I know what you really are. Gabriel's lips curved into a slight smile. That makes things easier for me, he replied, a hint of approval in his tone. Gabriel's voice was steady as he revealed, I am the underboss of the Angelini Mafia. Davina knew what that meant. He was the number 2, the right hand of the Don. A powerful position, but also a dangerous one. I have more enemies than I can count, he continued, and they would do anything to get their hands on my son, the next heir. Gabriel then explained Davina's role. She was to protect Mikey, to ensure his safety above all else. If that's all, he added, there won't be any problems. Sensing there was more, Davina asked, what other duties will I have? She began listing the various responsibilities she could manage, but Gabriel cut her off, saying it wouldn't be necessary. Her only job was to protect Mikey, but Davina was insistent. Childcare is about looking after many things, not just the child, she countered. Gabriel moved closer, leaning in until his lips were near her ear. His voice dropped to a cold, sharp tone as he clarified, maybe I wasn't clear. Your only duty is to never let my son out of your sight. A chill ran down Davina's spine as she realized her mistake. Her eyes widened in panic as she noticed Mikey was no longer there. She had let him out of her sight. Gabriel's gaze was hard as he said, looks like you have somewhere to be. Flustered and a bit embarrassed, Davina quickly nodded. Yes, she replied, before hurrying out of the room to find Mikey, her heart racing with urgency. She had only just begun her new role, and already she was falling behind. Davina rushed out the door, her eyes darting frantically as she searched for Mikey. Suddenly, a sharp scream pierced the air. Mikey's scream. Her heart pounded as she sprinted towards the sound, only to find 2 men shoving him into the back of a van. Panic set in as she watched the vehicle speed away. She was horrified. 2 men had kidnapped Mikey on her very first day. Turning back, she caught sight of Gabriel standing in the doorway of the mansion, his expression dark with fury. Davina knew she had made a grave mistake. She had to save Mikey, no matter what. Her mind raced with urgency, knowing this was her chance to prove herself or fail completely. Gabriel's voice was sharp with urgency as he demanded, what happened? Breathless and shaken, Davina replied, masked kidnappers. They took Mikey as I was running. His expression turned cold, and he grabbed her arm tightly. Then go after them, he ordered. Without hesitation, she yanked her arm free. I will find him, she promised, climbing into the car. Call the police, she added, but just before the door shut, Gabriel's voice cut through. If you had done your job, I wouldn't have to. Her jaw clenched, but she knew there was no time to argue. Inside the car, Adam glanced back, his face tense. Where should I go? He asked. Davina kept her eyes forward. Keep straight until I tell you. Her fingers flew over her laptop keyboard, tracking the van's license plate. Her heart raced as she realized it was nearby. Adam smirked slightly. That makes it easy for us. Davina's brow furrowed with suspicion. Or maybe it's a trap, she murmured. She quickly gave Adam directions as they sped down the road. Adam, sensing her intensity, asked, What are you doing now? Hacking into the closest cell towers, she replied, her focus razor sharp. I need to find out how many people are in that building. Within moments, she found her answer. There are 3 phones in the building they stopped at, she confirmed, her voice steady. She turned to Adam. Wait here and park the car. I'll go in. She prepared herself, knowing she would need all her wits and strength to get Mikey back safely. The mission had only just begun. Davina approached the building with determination, her eyes quickly assessing the scene. A professional security guard stood firmly outside, blocking the entrance. She took a deep breath and called out, Let me in. I'm warning you, I'm well trained. The guard's expression remained stoic, his stance unyielding, as if he found her threat laughable. Davina knew there was no time for negotiations. The moment he made a move to stop her, she lunged forward, striking with precision. The guard countered with practiced force, but Davina was swift, using every ounce of her training to evade his blows and retaliate with her own. They exchanged rapid strikes, the sound of fists meeting flesh echoing through the alleyway. With a final surge of strength, Davina maneuvered behind him, delivering a sharp kick that sent him sprawling to the ground. She stood over him, breathless but resolute. The guard, disoriented and beaten, groaned in defeat. Without wasting a second, Davina pushed open the door, ready for whatever lay ahead. She had come too far to fail now. Davina slipped into the building, her eyes scanning for any signs of danger. She grabbed a large metal plate from a nearby table, gripping it tightly like a makeshift shield. Her heart pounded as she moved deeper inside, every step bringing her closer to the door she had seen. Through a small window, she spotted Mikey inside, his face pale with fear but otherwise unharmed. She knew she had to act fast. Without hesitation, she pushed the door open and burst into the room. Two men turned to face her, surprise flashing in their eyes. Wasting no time, Davina swung the heavy plate with all her strength, catching one of the kidnappers off guard. He stumbled back, dazed, but the other man charged at her. She ducked under his punch and countered with a swift kick to his side. They were stronger than she expected, but she was quicker. The room erupted into chaos as the three of them grappled and fought. Davina dodged blows and retaliated with calculated strikes, using the plate to block and deflect. She could feel the adrenaline surging through her veins as she fought with everything she had. Her only thought was getting Mikey out safely, no matter what it took. She was outnumbered, but Davina fought with the ferocity of someone who knew she could not afford to fail. Davina landed a final blow, and the last of the kidnappers crumpled to the ground, defeated. She breathed heavily, glancing at Mikey, who looked up at her with wide, worried eyes. "Is it over?" he asked, his voice trembling. Davina managed a small smile. "Almost," she assured him. She quickly hoisted Mikey onto her shoulder and sprinted out of the building, rushing towards the car where Adam was waiting. She placed Mikey in the back seat and began untying the ropes around him, asking a few quick questions to ensure he was okay. Seeing the fear in his eyes, Davina felt a pang in her heart. She saw herself as a child in his expression, scared and uncertain. She wrapped him in a comforting hug, whispering softly, "You're safe now." Just then, Adam's voice cut through the moment. "I feel like a jerk," he muttered. Davina's body tensed as she tightened her hold on Mikey. Suddenly, Adam pulled out a gun, pointing it directly at her. "Walk away," he commanded coldly. "Leave the kid and take the $2 million in this suitcase." Davina's eyes narrowed. "Are you with the kidnappers?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady. Adam shook his head. "No, but this is the perfect opportunity to take Mikey while he's out of Gabriel's sight," he replied, a smirk on his face. Davina realized he was dead serious. She had to think fast. Just as Adam prepared to pull the trigger, she discreetly pressed a button on her laptop. Suddenly, the windshield wipers flicked on, swiping back and forth and momentarily distracting him. Seizing the moment, she hit another button, and the window separating the driver's seat from the back began to rise. Adam's arm, still pointing the gun, got caught in the closing glass. He let out a scream of pain as the pressure clamped down. With the opportunity wide open, Davina hugged Mikey tightly and bolted from the car, running as fast as she could. They didn't stop until they reached the mansion. But as she approached the entrance, she froze. The car was already there, and Adam was standing next to Gabriel, both watching her with knowing expressions. Her heart sank as the realization hit her. It had all been a test.